and opinions expressed in this program are those of the participants and do not reflect the views of the streaming platforms, public access channels, the KittyRose lifestyle, or the program underwriters.
Tim's on my feet, stomping out the negativity. Everybody not a friend of me. Spread the love, still I move deliberately. Bully face on, but the smile be heavenly. Brooklyn girls, so they love the energy. Love sincerity, so I take the liberty to take them on a journey lyrically. Through hallways and alleys.
Hey everyone, and welcome back to another episode of The Next Chapter, where we discuss shades of gray. I am one of your hosts, Minister Kat, aka KittyRose, and I'm joined once again by the beautiful
Melissa D.
How you doing, beautiful? How are you?
Oh, it has been a week of all weeks. How are you?
Well, you said that to me just a few minutes ago, and you know, it's been really like 2 weeks since we've gathered together because of the surgery I had last week on my mouth. And as much as I tried to make it last week to the studio, I was not able to. So I've been in a little discomfort this last week. But it's been kind of crazy, you said, back at Puerto Rico. Do you want to discuss, or should we just move on?
I think it's interesting how sometimes like the planets align. Like you and I will discuss a topic and then the topic comes into play in my real life and then it comes to play even more and I'm like, oh my gosh, what is this? Is it like a manifestation thing that happens? Unfortunately, it wasn't like abundance of money, just an abundance of issues. So just taking it one moment at a time. That's all I can do.
Amen to that, girl. Well, before we start today's topic of the week, I wanted to kind of recap last week's show because I think last week's show, as controversial as it was in regards to voting and if it really matters, I did not give a roundabout ending. Like I gave my Jesus moment, but I didn't give a solution to the reason why I didn't vote. So if you don't mind, would you mind if I, take a little minute and kind of just give like a understanding to why I don't vote before we actually go into the topic of the week?
Yeah, so last week's topic was voting, right? And you had discussed that you don't vote. And I had discussed that I typically do vote, but because I'm here in Puerto Rico and haven't been able to register yet, I wasn't able to vote. So tell us, Kitty, what has gone on in the past 2 weeks?
Well, we just came off of midterm elections. I want to say congratulations, America. I mean, you guys did the damn thing. You really came out in numbers to vote and to be a part of this election process. Does it matter? Did it matter? I don't know. But the reason that I gave spiritually that I didn't vote, again, like I said, I never gave the solution to, okay, well, since you don't vote, then what do you do? So again, I was raised as one of Jehovah's Witnesses, but I am not an active member of this organization, even though my foundation is somewhat the truth. Excuse me, my foundation is somewhat the basis of what I learned growing up as one of Jehovah's Witnesses. But scripturally, I still have those same foundations. So selfishly, it's a selfish kind of love, the reason why I don't vote. Since the scriptures tell me that to no earthly man salvation belongs, no matter how good their intentions are, it gives us reasons then who do you put your hope in? So the story that we're told as Christians is about the life of Jesus Christ and when he came to this earth. And the reason supposedly that he came and died as a sacrifice was for our sins, to bring balance back to the sin, the original sin that Eve and Adam took part of by disobeying Jehovah God in the beginning, supposedly. And I say all that supposedly because, in this next chapter of my life, I don't question my faith, but I am questioning some of the things that I've learned just because of how deceptive men through the works of Satan has been with controlling what people hear, read, and understand. So scripturally, in John chapter 3, verses 16, I'm going to paraphrase, it talks about how Jesus Christ gave his life for everlasting life so that we could get everlasting life. What does that mean? So his life or his death brought balance to what was lost with Eve, because Adam and Eve supposedly were perfect humans. So since they were perfect humans and then sin, and their children now are born into sin, the only way that can be brought back to balance so that God's children can have the gift of life and everlasting life, another perfect person had to break that cycle or fix that cycle. So Christ, with his life and death, brought balance back to what we lost with Adam and Eve, because according to his story, he lived and died as a perfect man. We also know that in Revelations chapter 21, verses 4 and 5, it talks about a hope that in this time of after Armageddon, that when we do live in paradise, that there will be no more pain, no more death, that the former things have passed away. So in order for us to gain those blessings from Christ, we have to live our lives now accordingly in the present. So again, going back to that selfish service, we serve Jehovah, we serve God, Allah, whoever that is for us, in righteousness of all the rules that comes with that: voting, adultery, fornication, which yes, I won't say I suffer with fornication, but I do commit fornication in a sense that I have a monogamous relationship that I'm involved with, that I have sex with, you know what I'm saying, and who's not my husband. And I fight with that because for me, fornication always in my head meant those that are loosely living their lives, fornicating all about. But if you're in a relationship that's exclusive and you're not married yet, but the goal is to be married, do we not have intercourse until we're married? I don't know if that sounds like a logical behavior, but now I digress. So I just wanted to really talk about, go ahead.
But I kind of wanted to ask you, so you say that you were a child of Jehovah. Where are you in that part of your life right now?
Well, I still feel that I am one of Jehovah's Witnesses, even though I'm not a part of that organization, because this is what I do every day. I witness about my love and lifestyle, serving to the best of my human ability, Jehovah God. So again, to my best of my human ability in my selfish service, I try my best to live accordingly so that selfishly I can have the goal of everlasting life in a paradise environment right here on earth, or these other planets that he has created that no life as of we know lives on yet. Because I think that that's what the other planets were created for. I do believe, because you think if we never die, then where will we go? Because the earth is already overpopulated. To me, we have to prove ourselves worthy here on the earth, and then maybe once we get into paradise, then we'll live on the other planets. That I don't know. We don't get no scriptures about the other planets, but
oh girl, you are giving our stalkers so much ammunition this week.
But again, you know, I really, like I said, I just felt like I left it just blank. You don't have to agree with me. You don't even have to agree with Melissa. And Melissa, you said last week that I call you stupid. I don't ever remember calling you stupid. So, but again, even if I did, which I did not, you don't have to agree with what we're saying. But we wanted to give you guys our expertise of where we're at in these next chapters of our lives, of understanding what it is that we're learning. So in our understanding of what we're learning, then we can give it to you, and then you can take the information that you're being given and decide for yourself what feels good for you. Because that's really what I encourage everyone to do. What feels good to you? Because we're being fed things all over the place, like today's topic.
And I just want to put it out there, Kitty and I are not in a verbally abusive relationship.
We are not.
When you use the word stupid, it's more of like, girl, you're being silly.
Yes. I had to think about that. I was like, when have I called her stupid?
No.
But let's get right into this week's topic of the week. And this week's topic of the week, dun 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 dun, once again of a personal nature. Childhood abandonment. Right.
So what is childhood abandonment?
Am I good enough? Father, can you hear me? I don't know. Am I good enough? If my mama and daddy left me, what man would want me? I don't know. Childhood abandonment. What was you about to say?
What is childhood abandonment? And I know as a therapist, this comes into play with a lot of the adults I work with, because it's
really?
abandonment. Oh yeah, abandonment issues kind of creep into our relationships as we get older. We have abandonment issues, we have attachment issues, afraid that our partner is going to up and leave us. We have this fear of like this push and pull, like I love you, but I got to push you away because of this fear. So yeah, so childhood abandonment comes into play, but what is it? What is it really?
And you know what's funny? I used to have this spiritual godmother, advisor in my life, who is no longer in my life. But when she was in my life, she used to tell me all the time, well, not all the time, but every so often, she used to say to me, you know, you have some trauma you haven't dealt with. And I'm like, what are you talking? And I swear to you on the life of my kids, I was like, what are you talking about? Because I couldn't remember anything per se happening to me. You know, shit happened to me like it happens, unfortunately, to most of us as women. I've been raped, I've been molested, you know, I've been broken up, I've been cheated on, but I didn't know what she was talking about because I couldn't remember anything tragic. I couldn't remember, I wasn't abused to my knowledge by my father. I wasn't beat as a kid. You know, I didn't know what she was talking about. And when we did this topic and did the research, it came to me that I believe that the childhood trauma that she was talking about was me, the way I tell the story, because my mother does not tell the story this way, is me being kicked out or asked to leave my home at 15. And I think that it didn't start there. It might have ended there, but I think the trauma started probably when my mother first asked my father to leave. And I remember the day that my father left. It was the police took him because he was beating the shit out of my mother. And the neighbors called the police. And I remember the day like it was yesterday. I think I was 6. And they was pulling him down the stairs. We lived on the 3rd floor. And he was all hot and sweaty, had a white wife beater on. And I just remember him crying, telling me, Sha, I'm sorry, Sha, I'm sorry, as they were pulling him away. And then that is when him and my mother ended the relationship.
Well, that sounds like some trauma to me.
But yeah. But I really blocked it out because it was so much a part of my life. And I think like right after my father was asked to leave the household, you know, my mother began to put so much of the responsibility of working the household onto me. So now I'm like 8 years old helping my mother. Remember we talked about this a few weeks ago, adultification, helping my mother raise my 2 younger brothers that aren't that much younger than me. My middle brother is literally, I was born in 74, he was born in 75. And then my little brother is 77. So literally we're back to back, you know, but now she has me in this parental position because now she doesn't have a husband. So she's looking to me, and I don't even think she did this consciously. She's looking to me to be her partner when it comes to the child rearing responsibilities in the household, because she now went off to work. My mother was a worker like I ain't never seen before. You know what I'm saying? So I think because we became latchkey children, we didn't just become latchkey children where we were home and responsible for each other. We became latchkey children in the sense that now I'm responsible for 2 younger siblings that ain't that much younger than me, that now I have to make sure, and I don't even think I made sure they did homework or did we eat. I don't even remember what I was in charge of or not in charge of. But having the responsibility that did not stop, that has not stopped at 48 years old. I'm still fucking taking care of my brothers.
Yeah. And I think like when you think about that, like you internalize that as almost like a normalcy, right? You remember seeing dad being pulled out. You remember taking on these roles. And to you, thinking back, like, well, that wasn't a trauma until you really think about it. And yet the body and mind realize that it's a trauma. You consciously didn't realize it was a trauma, but your body and mind knows it's a trauma. And it continues to reactivate when we get back into these types of relationships, these roles that we are in. So we might find when we have partners, right? We're trying to seek out these certain, needs that we have. And then we continue to replay these traumas in our lives. And a lot of times people don't even realize it until we just stop and think about it. Like, oh, this is why I'm pushing this person away, or this is why I'm freaking out because they're not sending me a text message every day after we spent the evening together. So yeah, it comes into play, this abandonment stuff. As a child, we're continually trying to heal our child wounds as we go older.
But I think one of the biggest problems is that we don't even realize that this is trauma actually is happening to us. So because we didn't realize that it was trauma, we don't really get to deal with it or even know that it's happening in these adult lives that we're still continuing. So I think, again, this is what the beauty comes in the next chapter of our lives, because now that we do have these light bulb moments, it's our responsibility to share, well, not just share what trauma or abandonment could look like, but also share how we can prevent those feelings. Like, I'm sure right now, my 27-year-old son has abandonment issues, and it's weird because it's not weird, but it's weird because you can see it clearly with him from the age of 11 till now at 27 years old. But now at 27 years old, it's really like showing its true skin or true color, because he just texted me and his siblings the other day talking about how lonely he is, and what I was able to do is now encourage him. Well, one, are you a good friend? Because sometimes the trauma that we are affected by affects now our behavior towards others. So one, I had him look at himself and, well, are you a good friend to people? Are you good to people in what you're asking people to be to you? And then second, go and reach out to boys and girls clubs, volunteer, do something that's outside of your norm to give you sometimes the family and friends that you need. Because I realized that the one thing why I didn't realize I had trauma is because I still had so many angels around me giving me support and love that I didn't realize that the lack of support from my mother and father was actually being demonstrated in my behavior, because I was still reaching for love from parental figures, even maybe from some of the men that I dated. Because I think what happens is, and this is what's happening to my son and so many of our children out here, is that when parents do leave, for whatever reason, even death, but when parents leave, for whatever those reasons, a child can feel like, are they good enough? And I think that that's how I started to feel without even realizing, well, if my mom doesn't fuck with me and my father doesn't fuck with me, how would a man ever want to be with me? Am I worthy enough to receive love from someone other than, my parents, if my parents aren't giving me that love?
Exactly. And then when another thing that I recently have been reading is about like people pleasing. So a lot of times through these types of traumas, we figure out how to please people so maybe they won't leave us. Right. And it's almost like, what is it, Mice and Men, when Lenny is like loving that animal so much that he ends up killing it. And sometimes that's what we do in relationships. It's like we have this fear of losing it, and we end up just like squishing it and losing it anyway, and it just kind of fulfills that prophecy.
Well, let's see what our research gave us. Let's go out to our first video and then dissect that and see what we come up with after viewing what our research gave us.
The point of separation. Abandonment is an experience a person has when they feel like they've been left. And not only left, but left to fend for themselves, that they have been really left in a vulnerable position. That word abandonment really implies one person leaving someone and almost not taking responsibility. So it's almost a word that fits when we're talking about, for example, abandoning a child or abandoning someone who may be in a place of need because they're not able to take care of themselves or something like that. So there's a depth to that word. So a person who has abandonment issues really struggles with that point of separation or departure. The perfect person who is having the abandonment issue is actually perfectly capable of taking care of themselves. They can feed themselves, they can drive a car, they can go to work. But there's something about that point of departure that really feels so primal, almost like, again, a child being left.
Interesting. We can function day to day, but it's the departure part that tends to set us awry.
And you kind of mentioned that a little bit when it talked about, if someone doesn't text you every day or call you every day, is that one of those triggers of feeling abandoned, that you have to have a partner? It's so funny. Last night I went out, and the night before when I was going out, I wasn't able to make out because still being on antibiotics. But when I was going out Tuesday night, I told D, I was like, I'll call you when I get there, and I'll call you when I get home. And he was like, you ain't got to do all that. And I was like, you don't care? I was like, what do you mean? I was like, I'm so used to having men that I've been involved with that's like, check when you get home and call when you get home. So him not caring was like, I felt like you don't care. And I used those words. And he was like, it's not that I don't care. He was like, it's just not that serious. So it's funny how we get in these situations where I will have a pissy fit with him if he goes hours and a day without calling and texting me. I'll be like, oh, you didn't think about me today? You know what I'm saying? What's going on with you? So who knows if that's trickling down or from, whatever I'm feeling from growing up. What stood out to me was the abandonment of feeling that you have to fend for yourself. I know that I believe that affected my behavior in my marriage. Me feeling or being so independent that I didn't trust the process of marriage. And when year 9 came, I removed myself from the situation, not trusting my husband or feeling my husband was responsible enough to carry us through. So even though he didn't leave, I felt like I had to fend for myself. So I left before he left because he would have never left. But I believe that came from, like I said, the way I tell the story of being asked to leave my childhood home at the age of 15. And literally when I went to live with my grandmother for about a year, and then at the age of 17, coming to 18, I moved into my first apartment on my own. So I was with my grandmother from 16 till about that time. So I've been on my own since about 18, taking care of myself financially, but still needing a mom and dad. My daughter is 19 years old, and she loves to talk about how independent she is and how grown she is and how much she don't need me. But I would die if at 19 she couldn't call me, because at 19, I know that she still needs me. Even though she pays for her own apartment, she has her own car, she's paying for her college education, she's in a full-blown adult relationship, she works full-time, but she's still 19. Even my son at 24, even my son at 27, I still feel like they need me. So if I still feel like, as a parent of 3 with adult children still needing me, I definitely think that I felt this way without acknowledging it at 18, now being independent, having to take care of myself or fend for myself, as the woman mentioned in the video.
And so one of the things that I work with my clients on when they're having these types of issues is kind of telling yourself, like, so if you start feeling that anxiety, so like when you start feeling like D isn't responding to you, the story that you're telling yourself is that he doesn't care anymore. He doesn't love me anymore. So what I tell my clients in this type of situation is that feeling is real. Real feelings are happening here. They're feelings that are coming from the trauma that has happened. But you have to ask yourself, is it real? Is it really mean that he does not love you anymore? That he is not thinking about you? And the case is that that's not true, right? He wouldn't just all of a sudden decide he no longer wants anything to do with you, no longer wants to love you anymore. So I tell my clients, the feeling is real, but is it true? And sometimes that kind of helps bring down that anxiety.
And Derek helps me with that too, because he actually shared that with me when we first started dating. He said, all your feelings ain't, he said, every feeling ain't fat.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah, it's
You know what I'm
not
saying?
always true.
I think that that's what's important about acknowledging and expressing your feelings. Just because every feeling ain't fat doesn't mean that you shouldn't still share what you're feeling and how you're feeling. Because now, if I went on that basic that every feeling isn't fat, then I would never tell him what I'm feeling about anything, because hey, that's just my feeling, that's just my opinion. But now that I get to express this to him, he gets to actually now have some feedback. He could tell me I'm wrong. He could tell me, oh, I understand. He could tell me, oh, that's valid. But now there's a dialogue of understanding, so that I'm not just in the dark in my head about what's going on or what I think is going on. Because again, I think that childhood trauma or that childhood abandonment starts to plant seeds in our head that aren't necessarily true. Because when I think about abandonment from my parents, did they really abandon me if they did their part? I always say to people, you know, my parents, because people like to put all the blame on my mother. But I have two living parents. You know what I'm saying? So if I have two living parents, but they gave me values, my mother taught me and brought Jehovah in my life. My mother and father both taught me how to be a hard worker. They both taught me how to keep a clean house. My father, you know, showed me how to cook. You know, so these things to me that are instrumental in who I am, being cleanly, being godly, being spiritual, being focused, being hardworking, those are attributes that have taken care of me and carried me through these 48 years. So they did their part. You know, now I would appreciate more, but maybe they're not built for that. So do we just take what was given and value that? Or do we really now sink into this feeling we're not enough?
And I think that's just continuation of work that we have to continue doing for ourselves as we continue being humans on this planet, is kind of looking at how is this trauma impacting our daily life and our relationships, not with just our partners, but our friends, our bosses, our co-workers, things like that. And it's work that we have to continue to do. And it's important to be able to realize that that's work that we need to do. And as a person on the receiving end, important to know that sometimes somebody with abandonment issues just needs you to hold space for them and say, like, I hear what you're saying. Let me give you a hug.
Right.
You know, there doesn't always need to be an answer. You know, sometimes we just need I'm sorry. I hear you.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
The second video that I was able to research is the impact of early emotional neglect. Let's see what this video had to say.
I feel like we need to put like a warning on the top of this one, because for people who feel abandonment issues, this might be tough for them to watch. So,
well, I'm glad you put that disclosure.
Yes.
Let's go.
Babies this young are extremely responsive to the emotions and the reactivity and the social interaction that they get from the world around them. This is something that we started studying 30, 40 years ago, when people didn't think that infants could engage in social interaction. In the still face experiment, what the mother did was she sits down and she's playing with her baby, who's about a year of age.
I'm like a girl. Oh.
And she gives a greeting to the baby gives a greeting back to her.
Yeah.
This baby starts pointing at different places in the world, and the mother's trying to engage her and play with her. They're working to coordinate their emotions and their intentions, what they want to do in the world. And that's really what the baby is used to. And then we ask the mother to not respond to the baby. The baby very quickly picks up on this, and then she uses all of her abilities to try and get the mother back. She smiles at the mother. She points because she's used to the mother looking where she points. The baby puts both hands up in front of her and says, "What's happening here?" She makes that screechy sound at the mother, like, come on, why aren't we doing this? Even in this 2 minutes, when they don't get the normal reaction, they react with negative emotions, they turn away, they feel the stress of it, they actually may lose control of their posture because of the stress that they're experiencing.
Okay. I'm here. And what do you do?
Watching the baby get distressed can be highly
so
triggering.
baby.
If a child can get so upset over a few seconds of cold and unfeeling behavior, we have a sense of what can happen over years or more of neglect. No wonder some of us don't feel so well inside. We had an equivalent of a still-faced parent for our first decade and more.
Video gets me every time. It gets me every time.
First of all, I'm always impressed with babies because you be sleeping, but they are fucking brilliant. But okay, I don't know where to go, where to start. The baby's reaction is amazing. That was the first thing that stood out. But it really, the mother's face, or the mute face, was daunting when she went blank, and the baby's efforts to get her attention. Like he couldn't say, but verbally he couldn't say, but his emotions was trying to get a reaction from her because he felt something different, and he couldn't have been a year old yet.
Yeah, and the thing is that this is just an experiment of 2 minutes. And think of all the children that are growing up who have parents who are addicted to substances, have their own mental health issues, postpartum depression. You know, like, we're growing up in these types of situations, and we're learning how to deal with these things ourselves, to figure out how to soothe ourselves, and hopefully, you know, not repeat these patterns, but after stressing in some way.
I agree. So I think that when we don't realize the impact of what our actions are to our children at an early age, we don't realize then the impact it has over them as adults. And I think the reason why we're not acknowledging the impact that our behavior may do as the parent or the one in the household as the adult figure is because usually that's because we're suffering from our own trauma or our own lack of what wasn't done or what was done to us growing up. You know, I don't know in the white community, but I know in the black community, you know, there's a saying, you know, what goes on in the house stays in the house. You know what I'm saying? What goes on in the house, don't you talk about. But not only don't you talk about, not outside of the house, but even amongst yourself in the house. So if you're going through, you know, feeling like my mother's not talking to me enough or my father's not talking to me enough, but you're not able to be in a position to address these things because you're taught to kind of be quiet, stay in your place, then that could be a form of abandonment, even though someone's in the house. I remember how I felt sometimes abandoned in the marriage I was in, because I've heard of a saying where you can feel alone even with someone. So I think that if you know, or something is familiar that happened to you as a child, that even happens to you as an adult when it comes from a parental figure, how it can now mask itself in your adult romantic relationships is you feeling, like I said, that you're not enough, or that you're not being heard, or that you can be heard because you're taught not to express yourself. So that could still be a form of abandonment because you're not allowed to express your feelings so that you can talk about what's bothering you and deal with them and move on. But if we're not dealing with them, we don't move on.
Then I also think about what we have now as the helicopter parents, right? Is the parents that do everything for the child. If the child is distressed, we don't want the child to be distressed. And then they grow up being adults who can't function on their own. So it's almost interesting, like, we've got people who are abandoned, who are, you know, I cannot depend on anybody, don't leave me. But then we have the children who grew up from helicopter parents. It's like, I can't do anything myself. You don't love me. You're bringing me pain. So Being a parent is hard. I don't know how you did it 3 times, Miss Kitty.
On that note, let's go to a PSA.
When times get dark, we can't see the help that's all around us. Let 211 be your guiding light for help with food, healthcare, and other resources.
211, how can I help you?
Call 211 or visit 211.org. 211, get connected, get help.
We scored? Yeah, we scored. We're going to the playoffs. I can't believe I missed that. Every time I'm buzzed, I spend too much time on my phone. What? I should take your phone away. No. I'll call for a ride. Wait, why does my face look like that?
I'm playing with these new face filters.
Okay, you know what? Yep, that's mine.
But I need that back.
No.
Kevin!
So, girl, you ain't never lied. Yes, being a parent is very difficult. And it's interesting because even when you have the best intentions, you can still fuck up your kids. When you're talking about the helicopter parents, you know, I remember, you know, again, going back to my husband in this situation in my marriage, you know, I think I pretty much have one of the best mother-in-laws I've ever had or seen in this world. She's one of the dopest women I've ever met or come in contact with. I also think she's one of the dopest mothers I've ever met. However, I also feel like she enabled her sons because they lost their father due to drunk driving when my husband was 5 years old. And I felt like because of that, then she did everything for them. And that was one of the problems in our marriage because he always knew that he could have his mom, which is what we want, but then it allowed him to fuck up all the time knowing that I got my mama. So it's funny how the abandonment doesn't necessarily have to happen directly, indirectly, because the other parent is trying to now make up for whatever issues lacking that child may have because of an abandonment from another parent, even if it's death where it's not purpose, you still end up affecting your child as an adult because of being too much or giving them too much. So yes, it's a very difficult and fine line being a parent because I don't think our intentions are to hurt our children. But I think
Exactly. Yeah. And I think about people who have children like late teens, early 20s, like how difficult that was. I mean, how old were you when you had your first child?
21.
Yes. Think of that now. 21, having a child and supposedly being able to know how to keep this human from dying. I mean, it's just amazing. Were you scared at 21?
I was scared at 21. I was angry at 23 with the next one. But yes, I was scared at 21. And the one thing I will say about having a baby at 21 that I would love to do as a separate PSA for folks is that I got pregnant with my son on the first go around. The first time I had sex with his father, I got pregnant. Thinking, oh no, I'm not gonna get pregnant. I'm 20 years old. He's 30 something years old. He was going through a divorce. He already had a kid. Why would he want to impregnate a 20-year-old girl? But ladies and gentlemen, the first time we had sex, I got pregnant. And I think because of being this young person, you know, yes, I made decisions that I thought was best for my children. But one of the reasons why my son, my oldest son to this day is dealing with abandonment issues is because I thought that in my marriage, that because of how much that his father, his stepfather, my husband loved him or showed that he loved him, that when I ended the marriage, I didn't think that he would stop being a father to my son. And he did. But my son blames me. He doesn't blame my husband. He might subconsciously, but out loud on the surface, he blames me. So indirectly, I'm still responsible for his abandonment issues because I was the one who fell in love with Eric, married Eric, had more children, and left Eric thinking that when I left or leave the situation, things aren't going to change when it comes to us parenting our children. And they did. And I had to deal with that. You know, I had to deal with those results of Isaiah acting out, feeling abandoned. And not only did I have to deal with Isaiah acting out, but his siblings had to deal with Isaiah acting out, because it affected all of us in the household. One child being abandoned or one person being abandoned doesn't just affect that one person. It affects them and everybody that they're around on a regular or daily basis.
Yeah. And so it sounds like he was almost abandoned twice, right? And so now he's struggling with being abandoned twice. And once what happens once, it happens again. Is it going to happen a third time or a fourth time? So it's a very interesting dynamic.
It really. For some reason, when we did the schedule this week, I scheduled the PSAs back to back. So let's check out our last PSAs for the evening.
Today, I'm going to talk to you about physics. Come on in, girls. Let's go. This is the first rocket to get humans to Mars.
Really tall.
I'm a rocket structural engineer, designing and building parts of the rocket. You are the generation that will be stepping foot on Mars. Do I have a group of astronauts on my hands?
Yes.
You can become a rocket scientist or whatever else you want to be.
You know, a lot of people say when you're going somewhere, you don't want to look back. But I beg to differ. For her to see her father celebrate his graduation, it's the best feeling in the world. I can't lie and say it was easy. But sometimes you just have to stop everything and take it in. I looked at everything in a different light. I realized it started with me going back and getting my high school diploma.
That poor child in the pink shirt for the science one, she looks like she's in pain. That's how I look when I think about physics.
It's so funny because when we started 4 weeks ago doing our show at an hour, I always go back to that first show and it's like, what are we going to talk about for an hour? And we're already halfway through this episode. So we come to the part of the show where we do our Jesus moment. Still ain't got it. No.
All right.
Our Jesus moment. What is your Jesus moment? What is your takeaway from tonight's episode of abandonment or childhood abandonment? Are you good enough?
I think the moment is that video. That video gets me every time. Even though I've watched that video in school, becoming a social worker, that video always gets me. And I wonder, like, why? Why does it get me? Is it something that I've experienced? Is it something that's triggering something in my memory? And so I feel like if it's just a video that gets my mind going, I wonder what it does for other people, that video or other people's relationships, how it triggers things in our mind. So I think we've worked with stuff, we've gotten through stuff. Sometimes we still have work that we need to be done.
That's the key. We still have work that needs to be done. Because I think in my Jesus moment, what I realize is that it's constant. You know, things that we think didn't have impact in us as children, we have pushed aside so deep because of just being busy with our day-to-day lives. We tend to not even realize that there were actually abandonment issues, or that they were issues that we're struggling with or that we're fighting with. And sometimes when other people, like my godmother, see things that we don't see, instead of being like, what are you talking about? What are you talking about? What are you talking about? Maybe being more receptive to understanding what they're seeing that we're not seeing, you know. One of the things that I wanted to start doing in my Jesus moment was giving some type of spiritual come together, some type of spiritual conclusion, because what I realized is that as a minister, you know, I'm not here to convert anybody. Like you said the other day, you know, I pray over our show every week. That doesn't necessarily mean that you follow the same ways or the same guidelines of how I serve, but we work together as a team because we know that this is, you know, what I like to do and what keeps me kind of centered. So in my messaging, as a minister, that's all I'm doing, is just sharing a message to you all of where my understanding of the scriptures is currently at. So in that, I don't want to come on here and just, say I'm a minister. I do want to give you kinds of a spiritual, like I said, come together of, how we can move forward. How we can move forward with Jehovah's blessings. And again, I use my life as a testimony, is that the one reason why I didn't realize that I had abandonment issues is because of my relationship with Jehovah God. My relationship with Jehovah God, literally, I believe that, because the funny thing is, God, there's a tricky part to this. God knows everything, they say, right? And I don't know if that is entirely true, because if he does know everything, then didn't he know that Adam and Eve was going to sin? So I don't know about that. But what I do believe is that what he does know is how to give you, his child, what you need. So even though I had abandonment issues from my parents, I didn't have abandonment issues from my community. So it jarred me and blurred me a little bit to believing that I had childhood issues, because I had such a spiritual bountiful of angels that Jehovah God was bringing to my life steady from the age of 10 up until now. So I realized that even with every trauma that we go through, childhood, mid-teenagers, adult, that the beauty about having God in your life is that her constant love and protection over you gives you what you need, that sometimes you don't even realize that you are being affected by things, because the glory of his love covers you in such a way that you don't even realize that something else outside of his love is bothering you. So now that I realize that I have issues, I can embrace it because of the love that I've constantly have serving him all of my life. I can now realize that, yes, I have this trauma, but it didn't make me and it didn't break me. What it did was...
Can I ask a question?
Say again?
Would you say, I got a question for you. Would you say that God abandoned Adam and Eve?
No, I don't think that God abandoned Adam and Eve. I think that he gave them instructions, and once they disobeyed, he still loved them, because now he gave those instructions to their descendants. He never left them or his descendants. So no, I don't believe that he abandoned. I believe that what happened is there's consequences for freedom of choice. And I believe that people forget that we still have freedom of choice. The angels had freedom of choice. Satan had freedom of choice. Adam and Eve had freedom of choice. We have freedom of choice. What we do with our choices affects what comes, or the results of what our life comes from, because of the choices and decisions that we make. So the choice that I make serving Jehovah has allowed me almost to be in a bubble where I didn't realize that I might have had abandonment issues, and they probably were affected in these relationships, but not enough to where they stopped the relationships, but enough where at 48, going into this next chapter in my life, I can now receive what has happened, how I played a part in my actions towards others, and now how I'm able to receive and see how it maybe plays a part in my current relationship now. And now that I see it, how can I move away and not make it an issue? I don't need to make Derek feel like he doesn't love me or he doesn't think about me during the day because he didn't call me and check on me 50 times. And if he does now call and check on me 50 times, is it genuine because he wants to, or is he calling me because he don't want to hear my mouth about complaining?
Yes. I think it's the latter.
I think it is too. Fuck him. No, I think it is too. So that was I'm sorry, my headphone has been acting up today. Excuse me, guys, for this interruption. So yeah, that was my Jesus moment, just again, coming together to realize that, no matter what you go through, serving Jehovah, at least for me, has been my umbrella of love, You know what I'm saying? And I believe that that's what his love does for people. It covers them so they are able to deal with all these little mini traumas that happens in this sinful life that we're living.
And for me, it has been years and years of therapy.
One of the things I didn't get a chance to do before we go to the inbox question and before we go to the spotlight segment, I just want to give a congratulations to my boy Reggie Cush. He just did Caroline's on Broadway, baby.
Oh, that's exciting.
Yes,
oh, that's
they
awesome.
had their battle rap this week in New York, and I wasn't there because of this freaking mouth issue. But the snippets that I saw on social media, it was a packed house. He had over 100 people at Caroline's. So New York, y'all showed up. Y'all did the thing. I'm so proud of him. And this is only, well, this ain't even the beginning because he's been doing the damn thing. But it's only going to continue to go up. So I just wanted to give him a quick little shout out. Reggie Cush, bad comedian slash battle rapper. He just did the damn thing this week in New York at Caroline's on Broadway. So salute to him. So this
and he was on our show a few weeks ago. So if anybody can see that show, they can go to our YouTube channel and check that out.
Ain't she good? I think I'm gonna keep her around. So before we go to our spotlight segment, because our spotlight segment is just actually another acknowledgement like we did Reggie just now. So now we'll go to the spotlight moment right now, actually. I just saw Hadestown last night, so I'll do that next week. But one of the people that I wanted to spotlight this week is my girl, LaZette McCants. LaZette McCants is the owner of Volunteer Divas and Divos Plush. Now, LaZette is one of those, I want y'all to show her picture because this sister right here, one of the reasons why I love LaZette, I really love OG sisters, first of all, but she is one of them keep it gully sisters. She's probably in her 70s, you know what I'm saying? She keep it 100, but she does so much in the theater community. So this year at the Adulco Awards, which is the black version of the Tonys here in New York, they are actually acknowledging LaVette. So I just wanted to do my spotlight segment to her and Volunteer Divas and Divos because they are out here doing the damn thing. And just because you are 70 plus, don't mean that you can't pop it and cut a motherfucker if he don't know how to act.
Well, congratulations to her. That's amazing.
No doubt. So hopefully I will be covering the Adulco Awards. So we will be seeing her get her award if I'm there on the 28th of November. Like I said, the Adulco Awards is the Black Tonys. And speaking of Black Tonys, I went to go see Hadestown yesterday. Stay tuned for that preview next week. So this week's inbox question. Dun, dun, dun. I'm not going to do the inbox question that we got on the other page, Melissa D. You text me, you said, what the fuck is this? So we're not going to give no light to that person.
Getting any Cash App requests from Miss KittyRose. It's not the real KittyRose.
KittyRose is one word, not two. But our inbox question came from Ian. Ian here in the Bronx says, were we happy with the Rota turnout and results? So we just, like I said, we just came off of midterm elections. Let's speak on New York because we can't really speak, well, we can speak on some of the other states because I think that one of the southern space, Baltimore, see, I saw it on the news this morning. We got one of the youngest congressman who's like 27, 28, black brother who just got voted in as a governor in one of our Midwestern states. But let's talk about New York, because I don't know about those other states. I ain't really pay attention, so that's not good.
Well, one of the great things, a lot of LGBTQ plus individuals have been voted into office for the first time all over the country. And that is really great to see, especially for the community that I work with, the transgender individuals. You know, it's amazing to see that we finally have representation in office for the LGBTQ plus community.
All right, I will agree on that. I did notice, and I did see that here. I did see that as well. One of the things I did notice here in New York is that Kathy was the first woman elected, because she came in after Cuomo, but she actually in this election got elected, so she will be our official elected female governor. And that kind of bothered me, but didn't bother me, because when I saw that the prospects for the presidential candidates coming up in 2 years, they were still all men, and they were still all white men. So the fact that Kathy is the first woman in New York, in one of the most progressive cities in the United States, was, yes, happy, but still disappointing.
Yeah, I hear you.
You know.
So it sounds like you're both mixed happy and a little disappointed with what the results were in New York.
But happy in a sense of happy for progress, and happy for the illusion of progress, because I think that's still, you know, what I fight with in regards to this whole this whole voting issue. You know, is it an illusion? Because, you know, like I said, we came out in droves, you know, for the first time. I don't know if the midterm elections had this much turnout. Now, every 4 years, yeah, it's big. Every 4 years, rock the vote, you know, when Obama, you know, you see huge campaigns, you know, when really monumental things are happening. But I never have seen such promotion and advertising for midterm elections as I saw this season. So I really hope that it resonated with people, because there was such a severe call to action because of all the laws and bills that got reversed and got changed, again making you think that, well, if something as simple and not that simple as Roe v. Wade that got overturned. You know, right now, you talked last week about the marijuana laws being reversed, and now, you know, those criminals that are offended or have marijuana on their case, and now that's taken off. But can it still be back? I have men or brothers out here, like, I smoke freely. Let the police walk by me, I'll roll in a joint, smoking a blunt, no problem. But there's still so many of my black men, brothers, who won't smoke in front of the police because they feel like, that's that okie doke. Yeah, that ain't really real. So if we're not really believing in the laws or bills that gets changed or passed because they could get changed back, like Roe versus Wade, then again, can we really be happy with voters' turnout and voter results? But again, I think that the initiative, the desire to think that you are involved, maybe is what's good.
Yeah. I mean, hopefully it's more progress. We just got to keep hoping for more progress and not sliding back, because it seems like sometimes we're heading backwards and forward.
Right. So the way to not slide back is to follow the instructions that we've been giving you the last year that we've been online, and that's to follow us. Follow us online. Here's the time in the show. Here's a social media wrap up. Please, please, please. This is a community program, and we are supported by your efforts. Whether it's watching us on public access or watching us on YouTube, we could not do this work if it wasn't for you guys watching. But we need you guys to do more than watch. We need you guys to like, share, and comment. Share your thoughts, share your information, because there's information that sometimes we're not all able to give you in just this 59 minutes. And we need you guys as the community to chime on board and give us some information that can also not only help us, but help you. Because we are the next chapter where we discuss shades of gray. So we need your input. So please don't forget to like, follow, and share. And you can find us at the next chapter on our Facebook group to ask us your questions, because next week we're going to have another inbox question wanting to hear what you have to ask us on air. So join us every week We are daily in New York. We are daily on YouTube. We air Saturday at 11 o'clock on BronxNet. So, you know, you have ample
So many
time
opportunities. Yeah.
to see us and to share. And on that note, I think we had a full show. I think we're done.
Well, it was wonderful to see your beautiful face again, Miss Kitty.
You as well, my sister. So everyone, thank you for joining us tonight on another episode of The Next Chapter, where we discuss Shades of Grey. See you next week, guys. Bye.
If it seems we get busy, it's cause we actually do. Take a look into my eyes, let them take you to the side. Meet my ride or die, Shay and I. Thankful for my sisters by my side who held me down during dark times. Many train rides I took to get $1.